Welcome back to Inside Design, the talk show. Our guest for today is a clinical researcher who has worked in healthcare for over 15 years. She is an oncology clinical trial manager with Janssen Pharmaceuticals, and her work focuses on curing blood disorders. She completed her undergraduate studies at UNC Charlotte, and she received her master's degree from Capella University. She is a native of Columbia, South Carolina, and currently resides in Belmont, North Carolina, right next to where we're at, with her husband Cedric and her 5-year-old twin boys, Jameson and Jace. In her spare time, you can find her staying fit, completing home improvement projects, and trying to sneak in a much-needed nap. Please welcome to our show for today, Miss Shaniqua June.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
welcome.
you for having me.
Thank you. So, all right. So my first question is, how did you guys come to find New Zion, and how long have you been here now?
We joined New Zion in 2019. This was my husband's church when he lived here years ago, before he relocated to Atlanta, Georgia. We always joked that if we moved back to Charlotte, we didn't think it was going to happen, that this would be our church home. And God ordered our steps, and here we are.
Yes, that was the sermon for the day. Yes, I like that.
So your bio says that you're an oncology clinical trial manager. Tell us a little bit about that.
Most people don't know a lot about clinical research. It's a branch of healthcare science that focuses on safety and effectiveness of medications, devices, treatment regimens, and how those things work and affect the human body. I do all oncology work, so the work that I do is first in human studies, meaning they have not been tested in anyone else, and we're really focusing on how the body reacts with those drugs.
Okay, how long does testing from the testing to the results? How long? What's usually the turnaround time with that?
That's a good question. So it really depends on what the disease is and what we're trying to accomplish. You can have some studies that are 6 weeks. You can have some that are 3 years. It truly just depends on what we're trying to test.
Okay, and what is usually some of the most extensive things that that usually comes with that, or what you usually find?
Most times when people decide to participate in a clinical trial, they're going to be doing some of the same things or receiving the same treatments they would from their doctor.
Okay.
But in addition, we're going to draw blood at certain time points, so there may be additional pints of blood. They may have to get an additional ultrasound or an EKG. We're going to do more labs because we really want to know what's going on. On our side, we're looking at just how everything is affecting their body, meaning, did anything happen that was not supposed to happen? Are they doing everything in order by the protocol, which is kind of like a manual? Are they following all of the steps? So it's extensive in that regard. We have someone that may fly to a hospital site and say, okay, what's going on with your patients? How are they doing? How's it working? And we take that data and we then share it with other scientists, and we're doing the same research across the world. So it helps us get a bigger picture.
Cool.
So I have 2 questions. How do you find people who are willing to participate in these studies? And then once they do, what are the risks involved?
Great question. Okay, so first I want to say with African Americans, we all have heard, or if you have not, about the Tuskegee experiment that happened many, many years ago. And from that experience, African Americans have a very poor taste when it comes to research. We are not trusting. But it's important that we participate in these trials so we know how it works in our bodies. Our DNA is different than other cultures and other races. But for most people that want to do a trial, the doctor will go to them and say, hey, this is what you have going on, and we have found a better option. Do you believe this is something you want to do? The important thing is that they are informed completely, that they're always knowing what's going to happen, and that when they have questions, those questions are answered, and that they feel comfortable. So that's usually how we find them. Just at a hospital, we have doctors' offices and hospitals that participate in our studies.
Okay. And so what are the risks involved when they are participating, and how are they handled? Are they monitored closely enough so that if they are experiencing some side effects, they can
let us know, report it? So like I said, that's one of the big things that my team does, is we ensure that we stay in constant and consistent communication with the doctors, nurses, and the teams that are treating these patients. The risk can range from a host of things. But if you think about going to see your dermatologist and they say, oh, you have a mole, we need to remove it. In the removal process, you might bleed a little bit. That's a risk. It could be the same with what we're doing. And for some people, that risk their reward is greater than the risk, so they're going to take that risk. But they're aware of what potentially can happen before they start.
So what, as far as schooling, how much schooling or how many years typically goes into what you do or how you got into it?
When I started years ago, we didn't know about clinical research. I mean, I knew it existed, but when I was in undergraduate studies, it was you want to be a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer. I didn't know there was a thing. Now you can get an undergraduate degree in clinical research. You can get a master's degree in clinical research, a PhD. I do not have those undergraduate degrees, but I have certifications in it. So I feel like I learn on the job every day, to be honest.
Okay. All right.
Do you work mostly in a lab, coming up with the medications or whatever, or do you actually administer the medications to the patients?
So I work alongside a team of scientists as well as other clinicians, so doctors and nurses, and I don't do either of the things. I'm not in a lab. I manage a team in the United States. So as I was saying, those same studies that are happening in China and Asia and Europe, I'm managing this side, so I ensure that we just do everything in order. So honestly, my work is done at home in my office.
Oh, wow.
That sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. So tell us about your kids, because I met your kids. I met your sons y'all was at the cookout, and I just enjoyed watching them dance. So please tell us a little bit about your family and your husband and your kids, please.
So my husband and I, we have been married. We'll be married 10 years in October.
Yay, yay.
And we have 5-year-old twin boys, Jameson and Jace, and they are just everything. We struggled with infertility for several years, so to have we lost 2, but for him to give that back, they are just amazing. They just graduated from pre-K about 2 weeks ago, so we are heading to kindergarten now.
Yes.
They are 2 minutes apart in age, and Jameson knows that he is the oldest. He knows it. That's the one that was dancing. He knows it. They're very similar but different as well. And everybody got a baby, so one looks like myself and one looks like my husband.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Being with that, because somebody may have more questions about your clinical research and what it is that you do. So is there any info that you can give them?
I think the important thing is if individuals have questions about any kind of healthcare needs when it deals with research, they can always go to clinicaltrials.gov. If they are a patient at an institution, they can go to their website per se and see what trials are open and what are their available options. As far as myself, I am on Facebook and Instagram. I do have an Instagram page. It's called Splash of Mustard, and I just talk about how God has blessed me. So if they have any questions, they can find me there.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming through to the show. We'll see you next time here on Inside Design the Talk Show. You continue to be well.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kayla Brody.